have a doubt in my mind for all of eternity. I know I am eternal, and there's not one shred of a doubt. None. Like I
Mm.
waited until I had that final assurance. And and that was it. And I got up, I was like, oh well then.
Okay, today on the channel, I am welcoming a new friend. This is Lisa. Lisa contacted me a little while ago, I think through email, and we kind of exchanged very briefly. And she mentioned she had had a significant shift during an online retreat, and I thought that was an interesting point of departure and something to talk about. But I interviewed her to have a conversation on the channel, and this is Lisa. Welcome.
Hi, thanks, Angelo. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Angelo. Yeah, when I sent you the email, that was in January, it never occurred to me that I would be, having a chat about this on YouTube. So it just goes to show how all of this happens by itself in its own way. And I didn't have any choice or decision making in this whatsoever. It just unfolded this way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate your willingness and just the adventurous nature that sometimes this requires of us to kind of jump into the mystery.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just say, though, just for the benefit of everybody watching, that I do have a sinus and asthma sort of condition going on right now. So if I'm clearing my throat and I have to sit this way, so my sinus will remain draining so I can talk without a plug nose. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So maybe just let's start by giving us a little background about you, whatever feels relevant. What you think we need to know about you to understand how this started to play out for you.
Okay. Um, hmm. Well, I guess I'll start with enlightenment, the word enlightenment, because when I was in my 20s, I was very, very interested in religious, spiritual, mystical subjects of all kinds, especially history of religions. And I don't remember distinctly learning about the Buddha's teachings or enlightenment, but I know that I must have read that somewhere along the way. And I would have read, enlightenment is, the end of suffering. And that definitely stuck with me. Um, but anyway, let me just okay, let's stay right there. So there was a day in my 20s. I don't remember how old I was specifically, but I was watching TV and I was watching this horrendous program on animal cruelty. Um, it just showed up on my TV and there it was, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And it was so devastating. It was so painful. Uh, that I actually felt myself being unable to even handle it. And it's not like I hadn't seen that before, or there's just something about that day and that program and like the focus that I put in to watching it. Like I typically try not to look at that kind of thing. But I did, and I felt very, very profound pain, helplessness. And I distinctly made a declaration to myself. I'm going to become enlightened because I think this is the only way to help this. I didn't know what enlightenment meant. I knew it was freedom from suffering, and I knew it was something good. I didn't know. I didn't know what it would entail at the time to go through this, but I felt deep inside that it was my destiny, and that nothing else mattered. And um, so I actually did make this declaration to myself. Okay, this is my life purpose because I can't live in a world like this. I have to be able to do something. Um, So life went on. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say two things I wanted to reflect on. One is I know that experience very well. It's really intimate to me. And if I could give one reason why this happened for me, or why it has played out the way it has in terms of realization, is the suffering of others, of humans and animals, and the unnecessariness of much of it. And that those kinds of moments of seeing directly, like for me, there were different moments. At least one was something like that, like seeing animal cruelty. Others were like Holocaust films, watching like literal footage of what that looked like.
Cool.
Um, and and it really aligns with Buddhist tenets, really, is to just recognize that we're in an ocean of selfishness and brutality and confusion and disorientation, delusion, and to really instinctually know there's one way out of that, and what that is, and that's enlightenment. Is, to me, that's really awesome. I mean, it's like, gosh, so many people don't get to that even with initial realization. It takes a while to really align with that. But anyway, I appreciate it, and I very much resonate on a personal level with that. And the other thing I thought was fascinating is how you said, I knew enlightenment was the answer, but I didn't know what it was. And I've heard this before as well. It was a little bit like that for me, but I remember Adyashanti saying when the first time he saw the word, he knew that's where he was going, and he knew he didn't know what it was, but he knew he was going there. So anyway, didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to reflect a couple
Yeah.
of things about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's quite deep, a knowing, it's just, like I said, I don't even remember when I had read the word enlightenment. I don't remember. I remember the TV show and making the declaration, but I don't even remember. I just knew that enlightenment, oh yeah, that's for me. I don't know what it is, but yeah. And there's nothing else important in life. This is what I'm here for. But yeah, so that was that. And I was still in my 20s. So I was proceeding on with, jobs, careers, life, you know, but I do want to backtrack. My childhood was totally normal. I didn't have like religion forced on me, and I had caring parents and pretty well-rounded childhood. But I feel like I was born with PTSD. I was a really terrified kid, like from straight out of the gate. And I had multiple phobias, like fear, nervous system trauma, since I don't even, I don't know. It's like I was born with it. This was sort of like my thing. It was always there. And I had, I was compelled through my life to heal this, like to calm my nervous system down and relieve like a lot of the fear. And it wasn't just fear. I mean, even like first day of school at age 5, I remember it very vividly because I was terrified. And I basically, this sounds strong, but I hated being in the world and I hated everything about it. School, university, jobs, those scenarios, I was very well adjusted. I had no problem. I excelled in school. I had loads of friends. But inside, I had such extreme suffering, anxiety, and depression of just being alive and in the world and in all the systems of the world. And so this is sort of, I was doing well on the outside, but on the inside, this is what was propelling me through life. So I I didn't know how to be enlightened, and I didn't. Well, I made that declaration that day, but then it just didn't. I was like, well, I had this sort of like confidence that it'll show up when it's ready, and I don't have to worry. I just had this trust and faith, like it'll come. I'll just keep going. In the meantime, I need to figure out a way to not suffer in this life. So I need to find the right job, and I need to find the right this and that. So, for 20 years, like 20s and 30s, was all about changing jobs, changing places where I live, changing careers, going back to university, doing something that's more interesting, than maybe that'll alleviate the suffering I feel when I work in a job. So I just kept doing this. I did early on, I think it was around 2001. I was living overseas, so I was in a better location to travel. So I did a lot of traveling, and traveling sort of gave me the feeling of freedom. So I could feel freedom and joy when I traveled. So I did a lot of traveling, and I ended up going to Kathmandu. Some people may have heard of Kopan Monastery. It's a Tibetan monastery in Kathmandu. I found out that there was like, you could do like a 2-week introductory to Buddhism program there. So I went there, and it was a fantastic experience, obviously, like being in such, an amazing place like that, and to spend 2 weeks with the monks, living with the monks and the nuns, and learning all about Buddhism, and practicing meditating. But there was a nun that was in charge of the program. And so she would do talks with us every day. And one day she said, oh, enlightenment. Because I went there to see if I could figure out how to become enlightened, but it wasn't coming up. We were meditating, everything was great. Then one day she said, enlightenment takes eons. You can't get enlightened. It takes eons. And I was sitting there, and I thought, she's not right. That's not true. I know that's not true. And I don't know how I knew that. And this was before I read Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now. This was before I even knew about the now. I just knew, like, I felt sorry for her too, because she believed this, and I just knew it wasn't true. And then so I thought, okay, well, maybe maybe this isn't where I'm going to find this. And then there was another day when I saw a lot of the young people in the group, and they were taking their Buddhist vows to become a Buddhist. And for 2 seconds, I thought, oh, that'd be neat. I could be a Buddhist if I just do this, and then I could have this cool label of being a Buddhist. But like 2 seconds, and I thought, no, Lisa, that's fake. That's not, it's nothing. You can't do that. You can't do it. So I just watched.
I love how clear your instincts are. Just to be honest, like your
Yeah,
finger on the pulse of realization, like in a direct way, has been there forever.
it
I'm
has.
curious about your childhood when you said like you felt so much fear, and you really just kind of hated being in the world. And I can really relate to that. Although I don't know if I would have said that to myself. I just felt so trapped in it. But I'm just curious, did you ever mention the fear to like your parents or talk about it, or did you just kind of internalize it? And
No, it was very obvious. My fear was, like, I had a phobia of having water touch my face. So it would require 2 adults to hold me down to wash my hair. I had
wow.
a phobia of vomiting. So if I got sick, I'd be screaming and jumping all around the bathroom. It was very evident that I wouldn't talk to people. I was scared of strangers. I wouldn't talk. I had OCD.
Hmm.
Uh, it was obvious. I
Gotcha.
was a terrified kid. Yeah.
Hmm.
And social anxiety. And I've worked with that my whole life, social
Hmm.
anxiety, which is ironic to speak on this video, because it's like
Yeah.
one of
Well, you're doing a
social
great job, but
anxiety, rational
yeah,
judgment. Yeah. Well, I've done a lot of work. So,
yeah, I can tell.
uh,
A lot of people are going to I think a lot of people will relate to that though. I think people who are sensitive in the energetic sense to awakening and so forth are also very often very sensitive as children, and really had some tension or challenge in their childhood with just being alive. Yeah.
just being alive. Yeah. Yeah. Um, So, although I thoroughly enjoyed my 2 weeks in the monastery, I didn't really embark on meditation or Buddhism, but it always stayed close to my heart, definitely. And I would like read about it and everything. But a few years after that, Eckhart Tolle came into my life. I think that probably around 2006 or seven. Discovered him on Oprah Winfrey, and I read his A New Earth first. Um, and then I started listening to his audios, and I after a while I caught on. I thought, oh, he's enlightened. Oh, okay. He's enlightened. He's the only one I knew. So I thought, I'm going to stick with him, and I'm going to um, see what I can get. I was really drawn to him. Like it was as so many people are. So I listened to a lot of his videos and audios over 10 years. But I mean, but I'm still going on with life and trying to like white knuckle working and like just trying to figure out how to not suffer, you know. And in 2015, I had a turning point, but I had no idea I had a turning point, and I only figured that out like 4 months ago, as I can like look back in hindsight at the whole thing and see that, oh wow, that was a turning point. I'm just gonna grab some water here. So,
Yeah, of course. Anytime you need to, take your time.
yeah, 'cause the congestion is, yeah, makes it a little difficult to talk. So, yeah, so I'd been 2015. I was living overseas. I needed to come back to Canada. I live in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I just felt like it was time, and I needed to get some space and some. Canada's got lots of space. I needed space because I was living in a very stimulated place, culture, and environment. And so I came back in 2015 and everything changed. Um, a friend of mine said I should read this book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. So I was like, yeah, I'll read it. Definitely. I'm not a big reader, but I had a gut feeling. I was like, I should read this. So um, I started reading the book. Are you familiar with that book?
I know of the book, but I actually don't know exactly what it's about, and I haven't read it.
Right. Um, yeah. So Michael Singer, in his book, honestly, like I probably can't remember a whole lot of what he said, but the first two chapters, straight out of the gate, he teaches you to look at the voice in your head.
Hmm.
So his book was very in line with Eckhart Tolle. But as I was reading it, chapter one, right away, I thought, wow, like this is Eckhart Tolle, but with practical steps, finally, because I didn't get that with Eckhart. You know, how do I become enlightened like he is? And I couldn't get that. And so Michael Singer, like, so he spent a lot of time with very, very practical, easy to read steps on how to look at the voice in your head. And as I was reading it, I was fully absorbing it and I was doing it as he was explaining it. And I mean, I can't remember distinctly what he said, but there was one point where he was saying, so now look at the voice in your head and just like repeat what it's saying. Now pretend that that voice is a person and it's sitting next to you on the couch beside you. And I did that. And apparently, which I didn't know at the time, but now that I'm looking back, I remember, apparently I disidentified with the voice in my head. And by doing this. And so that's basically what the book is about. Like he's like a spiritual guide on working with thoughts. And yeah. So I was quite excited by this. And he recommended to watch The Voice, you know, to pick a time of day to watch The Voice and practice watching it. And I did. I did it. You know, sometimes you read a book and like a book like that, but you don't really follow it. Like you just read it and then that's it. I really did it. So I decided to use my daily shower to watch The Voice in the head. So every time I had a shower, I would just watch The Voice. And it was overwhelming. Like it talked so much. It was, you know, but I did this for about 2 months, maybe a little bit less, until it kind of faded out. And I did notice that the voice calmed down a lot. Now, looking back 8 years ago to that place, I can see now that having that kind of a disidentification with the voice in my head shifted everything because it happened that from that point onward, life became happier. And I didn't put it together until January, this past January, which I will get to eventually. Life became happier. Um, Michael Singer also had another instruction in that book that came later after the instruction on the voice in the head. And his instruction was it would be what I would compare to Eckhart's version of the pain body reactions. So, but Michael Singer said, when there are triggers that happen that trigger like a bodily sensation, emotion, painful, difficult, a trigger, he said to you have to stop and let it be there and let it burn through your body. And since I read that, I made and I was taking Eckhart's discussion too on the pain body and being in the present moment. So this was all going on, and this was kind of like my training. So I had these two books training me on what to do. So for the next 7 years, I made it a practice to accept everything as it is in the present moment, everything. And I felt like my interpretation of that was I was burning up, transmuting and burning up the pain body reactions in the body, the emotional, the painful conditionings and the painful reactivity. So I made this my number one focus. I did this for 7 years. But also what was happening for that 7 year period, which is the period that I look back on now and see as neutralizing reactivity and conditioning, emotion work and shadow and all of that without realizing that's really what was going on. What happened at the same time was I was an energy healer, let's call it. I don't really have a name for it. An energy healer, sort of just from natural ability. 25 years ago, I took a Reiki class, and the Reiki was fun and it was great and it was kind of up my alley. But as I started to do it on myself, and then eventually I did it for friends and for people that I knew, I was realizing that I was able to tune in to their energy and see things and feel things, that I had quite a heightened psychic ability. No surprise, because as a kid, I was a psychic sponge, although I was very, very, very vulnerable to negativity. Like, unfortunately, like I wasn't a kid that was talking to angels and things like that. I was absorbing all of the negativity around and trying to cope with that. But so I had been, over the years, I just naturally developed energy healing, my own kind of way to do it. But I had never done it as like a full-time income. I always worked in conventional jobs. But in 2015, when I came back to Nova Scotia, I decided to try to do it full-time and live off of it because I loved it. And working in regular jobs just was very difficult. So this was all happening. So this happened 2015 with this shift that I had no idea that happened. So what I found though was these energy treatments that I was doing for people. My intuition just got so much clearer. And my abilities to see and feel and kind of read energy in people, just it got very, very complex. I was able to really go deep into the mental realm and the emotion realm and spirit realm, like just, and what was happening were people that I was working on, because now I was working with like full-time paying clients, they were getting really good healings. Really effective. And I was able to work with trauma, dark stuff, really dark energy. And I was really able to do that. And I now, looking back, I can see that it was having this shift, like taking the bulk of the voice in the head and sort of removing it. What's funny about that, though, is Michael Singer, in the book, The Untethered Soul, he didn't talk about the I, the me. So I had absolutely no idea about that. I knew the
Mm.
voice in the head wasn't me, but it never dawned on me, well, who am I? So there was always that little piece that was missing. So, um, right. So this 7-year period that happened after I read the book, um, I went very, very deep into self uh, exploration because I have the ability to go into my own psyche, unconscious, like I could do for other people, and tap into deep emotional energies that's suppressed and help release it. And also during this 7-year period, I got into ayahuasca and I did very extensive amount of ayahuasca work. And that just helped me to go even deeper. And two main um, sort of channels of work that came through working with ayahuasca was it helped me to really offload the world from my system, because I see someone on the awakening track as somebody who is ready, whether they're conscious or of it or not, they're ready to leave the world and the character and everything sort of behind. So the ayahuasca work was helping me to sort of disconnect from all kinds of disconnect from the world. And the other thing that it did too, on a more emotional level, was it really helped me to uh, go deep into surrender of separation, loss, death, so that I could, I'll explain it, cope with death, loss, separation, basically the egoic emotional level, egoic level of fundamental relationships, like partner, parents. I was ayahuasca work was able to help me to go into deep surrender so that I could, in regular life, cope with loss, separation, with more groundedness and more of a strength, emotional strength to be able to do that. So the 7-year period that I went through was very deep, deep, deep emotional work that I felt very driven to do. And I did think, I was like, okay, maybe this is where enlightenment is. Maybe if I clear myself totally perfectly of absolutely every shadow, every reaction, because I was doing this reactivity work constantly. At the end of that, enlightenment will show up, because it didn't show up in the ayahuasca ceremonies. I thought in the beginning, I was like, oh, maybe it will. Then I caught on. It's like, no, that's not going to happen here. I could see very clearly that the ayahuasca work was about purge, and because that's what it is. And
Yeah.
so I went with that. Yeah. And
Your instincts are really good around that as well. That's a hard one for some people because they interpret mystical experiences or interpret even extreme experiences as, and they call it ego death and things like that, but interpret it as realization. But it's notably not, actually. It's good work, and it's good for deep emotion work, deep shadow work, revealing that which you can't see, teaching you how surrender feels, but it's not equivalent to realization in my experience.
oh, no, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I learned that through personal experience, doing that for sure. Realization happens in its own time. It doesn't matter how powerful your emotion work is or your spiritual experience or even like a kundalini awakening, which I did have later, like a big one. Even that couldn't shift the identity. That has to just happen, in its own time.
Mm.
So I was I was very driven. And then uh at the end of the 7 years, actually a little bit before the end of the 7 years, I had already stopped doing the energy treatments and I wasn't working because I was awakening. I didn't know it at the time in these words, but awakening was coming through and it was sort of forcing me to really retract from the world entirely. Just for me, this works differently for everyone. But for me, it was what I needed based on my own conditionings. I guess the body's conditionings, because everybody has a different set of conditionings. I think Adyashanti calls it the karmic load. I had my own karmic load and it needed to be dealt with in this particular way to make it optimal for awakening. So awakening was coming and it was, it was just like forcing me to really retract from the world even more. And I was always an introvert. So, I basically really by that point, I mean, I hadn't watched movies or TV for years. I was not interested anymore. No social media. The only thing I was basically doing was working with clients, which I loved so much, and really deep into sort of like the energetic realm, the healing and energetic realm. But I had to stop that, and I needed to get out of the city because I felt it was too stimulated and too harsh for me at the time. So I moved out to the country, and then I stopped working and I realized, wow, nature is healing me even more. This is what I needed because like the nervous system was so since birth, as I talked about already, so it was taking me on this life progression of healing, calming the nervous system, basically, because it was so fried. So I was a baby. And so I was like, yeah, it's peaceful, it's quiet, it's silent. There are animals, birds, trees. It was helping me get over lots of phobias, as I had phobias of bugs. I had phobias of animals in the woods. Like you name it, I was afraid of it. Don't and this is so funny why I could do ayahuasca because it's scary. It's a scary plant to work with. And I'm telling you, I was terrified every single time, but something compelled me to just keep going. And I was like, I gotta get through this fear. I just gotta do this. I just have to do it. Like I was just, compelled.
Mm.
So yeah, so yeah. So I'm in my new home out in the country and I'm feeling great, because I had knocked out quite a bit of suffering over this last 7 years. I could feel it. I felt free. I felt, there was like reactivities that were so strong that just weren't there anymore. I had little reactivities, but yeah, no, I felt really good. Um, and then it was December of 2022. And I distinctly recognized, okay, that I was at a wall of nothingness. And I was like, okay, um, my inner clearing work, because I could go in to like a meditative state and see things going on in my energy field and deep in the body or in my psyche and work there, letting these feelings come through, etc. But I knew that that came to an end. I was like, I don't think I can keep doing this because I mean, it's just going to keep going on forever. I did get that insight and I felt pretty good. I was like, what I did definitely was beneficial. There's no question. But this is the end of the road. So I'm finding myself sitting in my house. So I'm not connected to the world anymore. I didn't want to hang out with friends or I didn't even want to have friends. I was like, no, I just want to be alone. No distractions. I wasn't looking on the internet, nothing. And now I couldn't even, my last little thread to life was to go in and work with my own self. And I knew I couldn't do it anymore. So I would sit there. And this particular winter, I was alone in the house for that whole winter, totally alone with my cats. And I was like, okay, and where's enlightenment? Enlightenment didn't show up yet. So I enlightenment didn't show up. I was like, well, what can you do now? You just sit here, just see if you can be with nothing. Just be with it. So I would do that. It
Mm.
just sit there all day, just be. How can I be without being distracted? I felt good. I did feel a restlessness in the body. I felt something angsty really deep.
Mm.
Fate intervened and YouTube, which I never even watched videos on YouTube, but I ended up looking for something one day. And it was about, I was looking for, because when I was a child, I had collisions with the infinite, taking from Suzanne Siegel's book. You know that book, yeah.
Mm.
Collisions with
Yeah.
the infinite, yeah. So people might call it derealization. I don't tend to identify that that's sort of like what was going on with me. Because I had had these collisions for 20 years, and then they stopped one day. Everything took a turn. But I wrote a little piece on my website about that. If anybody's interested, if they've had that. Um, so I started thinking about that again because I always felt like there's some connection between that and enlightenment, but I never figured it out. So I was like researching, looking for something on that. And then YouTube algorithms sent me Suzanne Chang video, non-duality. I'd never heard of non-duality.
Mm.
I had no idea that all of these ordinary young people were enlightened all over the place. I had no idea. I thought it was just Eckhart Tolle and like Byron Katie. Like I was floored. But this video, nobody knows the true cost of the end of suffering. This poignant video, like it just hit me like a train. I watched this, I was in shock. I didn't even have to listen to a lot. I knew exactly what she was talking about. And that sent me off on a completely different trajectory, or a deeper trajectory, I should say, for the whole of 2023. I was like on a completely new, like the nothingness, no more. I was like, I was going really deep now down the rabbit hole. And I it only took a minute of listening to her to realize what enlightenment really was. It was, oh, there's an end of me. Okay, I knew there was some illusion that I was going to see through one day. I had no idea it was the self. It was me. I had no idea. But I realized I'm already dying. This is what's happening. And the mind took over and got scared.
Mm.
And so I went through, dominoes went for the next 6 months. And I was all alone in my house for the winter, totally in solitude with animals and birds and snow. And this was it. And I went through this. You talk about it was like ego death experiences,
Mhm.
because the ego was grappling with this because it was the first time that it had heard about this.
Mm. Yeah.
The law, the non-reality of itself. And so uh, so first of all, her video, then I started like non-duality. So I started searching, and your channel was the next one I found. And I started to watch your videos, and something inside me told me, uh, this channel here, Simply Always Awake, is the one that's going to help me understand this process because I had no knowledge of it. So I spent the whole year, 2023, delved into your work. And I was watching all kinds of other teachers too that were also contributing to putting all the pieces together. Um, but the emotional component of that Suzanne's video activated. Uh, that's what happened. Sorry, hang on here. uh, yeah, it activated some crazy stuff. I went through, so after that activation, um, and I don't remember what happened when, but within the course of that 6 months, December to maybe May, I was going through all kinds of existential stuff, let's say. Um, and I went through 2 nights, full nights, but they were separate. They weren't two in a row of fear of physical death all night, trembling, trembling in fear. I won't like go into it too much because but the first one was my cat. She seemed like she had like an asthma problem that struck at nighttime, and I couldn't call the vet till the morning. And suddenly, it just triggered in me, just out of nowhere, um, this terror of dying, of asphyxiation and death. I thought she was going to die horribly, but it then felt like me. And this was going on all night long. And, at night you're alone and you've already had this like deep, visceral, existential ego wake up. And so I had to endure this all night long, but my intuition was helping me, and it was saying, this is going to be good. This is good for you in the long run to just go through this. So I had to just get myself through it. A few weeks later, I had another night of death terror. I had a spontaneous spasm in my left hip area. It came totally out of nowhere. I didn't have any like mobility conditions or anything. It came out of absolutely nowhere. Later in hindsight, I can see that it was the activation of kundalini. It was just getting started with that. So the spasm was so intense uh, that I was laying in bed, and I had to lay on my back. I couldn't breathe comfortably because every time I did, the spasm would activate. It was so painful. And it was just the feeling of being in such a vulnerable position, can't move, to have to totally surrender all night long, like for like 7 hours. And I trembled in fear. I felt like I was going through physical death. I mean, it was crazy. So I had those two experiences. And now that I know about TRE and I have done that, I could see how trembling all night was very beneficial for the nervous system, to release a lot of the charge from all those phobias that I had, that I sort of came into the world with. And it really did. Personal identities started to fall. Like, I do want to say this for the benefit of people watching. These existential fears of death, and also because I had a couple of days where I realized there was no God, and I had no soul, and these things can sound scary to somebody who hasn't sort of gone through those. But I just want to say that it's just the mind that is saying that those things are scary, or that there's this deep loss, or something is final, lost forever, intense grief. It's just the mind that is triggering these emotional reactions to these things, fear of death. And I have to say, coming from somebody that has dealt my whole life with so much intense fear, and phobia of death, and that you actually do come out the other side of that fine. And those feelings don't last. Those beliefs that the mind feeds you, they don't last. They disintegrate. They weren't true in the first place. So fearful experiences, or existential experiences, or existential grief, if you do happen to have any of those, absolutely 100% they don't last.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And in fact, if you do find yourself going through them, good. They're helping you to get some nervous system static out of your system. And
Yeah.
you just go through it. So I did want to say that
I
because
appreciate that. I agree 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's when you're going through it, there's even remembering someone telling you that it's okay. It's not really consoling necessarily because you have to feel it. But the bit about thoughts is really important, and that's it. Like the simplest thoughts that are overlooked in that space are really compounding of the intensity of it. So like, I can't handle this. This is too much for me. Or even an image like a childhood image of just running away because you're just terrified or something. Like anything that's thought based like that will just amplify that whole experience. And then if you just kind of recognize, okay, that's just a thought though, and you're right back in the body. And I mean, you learn so much from this, but one of the things we learn is how the mind actually uses that enticement to pull us out of our sensations, actually, and that the sensations are fundamentally fine. And I agree with you that it does not last forever, and it is a temporary experience, but it's unpredictable. You don't know when it'll come and to what degree, and so forth. But I find people make it through fine. They really do.
Honestly, if I made it through fine, anybody can. I can really say that with 100% confidence because I was a ball of fear my whole life,
Mm.
like phobia fear, you know.
Yeah.
I worked really hard at it though, I must say. But yeah, yeah, you do have to feel it, but it is helpful because at that point when I was experiencing like the death nights, I didn't have the knowledge about the thoughts, so I had to kind of figure it out myself to get myself through. But with the knowledge of it, it would help to some degree. But sometimes you just have to go through these things energetically to sort of balance things out better. So,
Mm.
so yeah. In February 2022, so this is like 2 months after Suzanne Chang blew me wide open with her video. um, I decided one day, the seeker was born. I had no idea I was a seeker. Like I just had so much faith that, oh, enlightenment's going to come when it's ready. I just got to keep doing this, just keep dissolving all my suffering until it's gone, you know. But once I discovered all the non-duality channels and things, then yeah, so this is an important point I do want to share with people because I know there's a lot of people that are in this boat. Um, I had absolutely no idea that I had sort of like a pretty good awakening already, like in 2015. So as I was learning about this process on YouTube, uh, I became very, very confused. Very confused because I thought, well, I've never had an awakening. So, and I have inquiry and who am I? I would try so hard and something didn't line up. I was like, who am I? Well, I know I'm this space. So like, what is it? But I never had an awakening shift. I
Mm.
never had a shift,
Mhm.
so I was like feeling my way around in the dark for the whole year of 2023, like trying to figure out how to have a first shift. And it was despairing, like it was confusing and it was but just to backtrack a bit there, uh right. So February 2022, 2023. I wasn't strong into the seeking yet because I didn't really have it all figured out yet. I was still kind of new to the knowledge. But I decided, but I thought, no, I can make myself become enlightened. I can do that right now. I have to sit here. I'm going to sit on the couch and I'm gonna, like the Buddha under the tree, I'm going to sit here until I become enlightened. 10 minutes in, I was completely clear. I was determined. 10 minutes in, I felt a body rush, like a very
Mm.
physical one. And I thought, oh, this must be it. This must be like it. And then it was gone. And I was like, oh my God, what was that? That was something, but I don't know what it was. So I was looking online. It was like meditation, bliss feeling in the body. What is that? And I couldn't find anything. So I had to let it go. I tried to get it again. It was like, it was over, done. I was like, okay, oh well, I'll just keep watching videos and try to figure this out. So a few days later, I went for a massage, and I went in and I didn't really have anything going on because this hip thing that I went through had already sort of subsided. It had been a few weeks. But I did tell the massage therapist, I said, well, I had this weird hip thing, but it's gone now. She said, okay, well, I'll have a look at that. So she put a fire cup on it, on that spot. And when she put the cup on it, I felt like a laser beam go through my body. And my thought said, that just hit a target. I don't know what that target is, but that just hit a target. And that night, I had a kundalini, like a tidal wave of energy. Um, and I don't really want to talk too much about that because it kind of glamorizes it. It's not necessary for awakening. It's just an experience, energetic experience that I had that I needed to have to do just more sort of releasing.
Mm.
But it lasted the 3 days, 3 days, 3 nights, the intensity, and then it subsided. And I talk a little bit about it in my little story on my website if anybody's interested in reading about it.
Did you find it disturbing or enjoyable, or what was the
Oh no,
combination of it?
when it came on, it comes on when your body relaxes, so as you're falling asleep. So as I was falling asleep that night, the same tingly rush that I felt in the meditation, I instantly recognized it. I was like, oh, it's back again. But then it was much more full on.
Mm.
And then the mind came in and said, oh, you should be scared of this because you don't know what this is. So I was like, okay, yeah, it's the same thing, but this is not, this is much bigger.
Mm.
Maybe I could just go to sleep and it'll go away. No,
Mm.
because as you go to sleep, it's like, okay, good, you're relaxed. Let's like really go for it. So you can't go to sleep. And then I got scared. And then I was like, I think this is kundalini, but I'm not sure.
Mm.
So I was scared. I was resistant. But because I had done so much ayahuasca, it was very similar. I could
Mm.
get through this. I could, okay. Anyway, so it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was scary. But then after a while, it had very positive
Mm.
feelings that went with it as well. The whole experience was phenomenal, but everybody's is different. So,
Yeah,
um,
for sure. Absolutely.
what I will
Just
say,
knowing it's, I was say, just knowing it's Kundalini is really helpful. Even if you're not 100% sure, because I've met people that's happened to who really don't have even much spiritual context. And it's really disturbing often. They just are really freaked out by it.
I could totally understand that because I was
Mm.
freaked out and I had a little bit of a clue, a little, like I wasn't 100% sure. Um, I could see it could be extremely scary. Yeah, yeah. So because it comes like a rush, and it's like, okay, we're just gonna offload all this scary stuff you don't like, and you're gonna be lit up, and your psychic channel is gonna be, you're gonna see it all, you're gonna feel it, you're gonna know it, and it's, yeah, it's something. It's quite special, I must say. I will say though, it did open up awakening for me. Yeah, my sinus is all clogged now. um, after it subsided, I don't know. It was within 2 weeks of it activating, but after it was subsided, it was still working, but much subtler. Uh, I had one day out of the blue, I saw the character for what it was. I think I saw the cosmic joke. I'm not sure. I just knew. I just saw that me was just doing all these useless things. Oh, trying to awaken, doing all these useless things for nothing, for no one. Like it was and it was laughable, but I was a bit shocked too. And I didn't, quite know what to do with it. So I just kind of like, I don't know. I was like, okay, all right, all right. So a few days later, because the Kundalini, it opens you up to see. So it really set the stage to help me uh, see these illusions. A couple of days later, I know for sure I was starting to go into a no self shift. Out of the blue, middle of the day, I was like changing my bed, and the whole world went silent. Um, as in, uh, all of a sudden, it just felt like the world turned off. And it was like a silence that I've never experienced before. And so I recognized that, and I was like, ooh, ooh, something's happening here. Then I started to see, oh, I just started to see more clearly that nothing's happening. And uh, I started to feel a very strong pull, like a magnetic pull. It was energetic, not really strong, but I felt it in the body. I knew I was disappearing. I knew that I was disappearing. Everybody I knew was disappearing. The world was disappearing. And it wasn't just a knowing. I could feel something pulling me into into disappearance. And I was okay with it. And I kind of knew what it was. And all of a sudden, thought said, not a good time for this. And the pull was so strong that I had to sit on the edge of the bed and, with my eyes open, because I knew if I closed my eyes, I'd go fully, completely gone. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Mm.
And that was the end of it. Man, it was powerful. The pull was magnetic. It was very powerful. So it just goes to show that awakening happens in its own time. It doesn't matter how powerful a Kundalini experience is, or, if it's not the time, it's not the time. And it just
Mhm.
wasn't the time, you know. Uh, and it's fine. Like I'm okay with it. A couple of months later, I discovered TRE from watching your channel, and I felt I really resonated with that, so I started doing that, and then I ended up doing your July retreat, last July online retreat. That was my first one, and that was so extremely helpful. Doing those silent meditations, I recognized how much restlessness and angst was in the body. Like I could barely sit through a meditation. I was like, I got to go to the fridge and eat. That's all I wanted to do. So, and it's funny because I would Chad, the guy you have that does the bells for the meditation rounds, he does the bell and he usually stays on the screen. And so sometimes I would just watch him. And he was so perfectly zen. Like I was just in awe of his peace, and I thought, that's my goal. I want that. That's what I want. That's what I want. I
I'm
want to
gonna
be
make
able to.
t-shirts. I want to be like Chad.
Oh, I know. I'm sure you've probably heard other people say that.
I love it.
It was that was my goal. So and so just to jump ahead a little bit, just to finish that little story, just so people can see the power of TRE. Uh, so I had done TRE since that July retreat. I did it. I then connected with Chris Gimon for mentorship. And she really helped me to, she's like, oh, Lisa, you got to do it more than what you're doing. You got to make it, you got to discipline yourself and do it more than you feel like you need it. You need to do it more. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I was doing it very, like three times a week at least. And so just to jump ahead to when I did the December 2023 retreat, online retreat with you. I wasn't at Chad's level, but I was almost.
Mhm.
So and I didn't even think about it until I sat down to do the first meditation round, and I thought, oh my God, this is what TRE did. Like it just cleared that like restless, angsty body
Mhm.
stuff that was still hanging in
Beautiful.
very, very deep. Yeah. Yeah. The TRE, I didn't really need it to work with a lot of heavy trauma because I had done so much of that previously with other methods, but that angsty restlessness in the body. So I was able to sit there. I didn't need to go eat anything. I could sit and do most of the meditations, not perfectly, but it was amazing. So, uh, that, and this is where we come to my email to you. That December retreat, 2023. So that discovery that the TRE had done so much for me, but also up until that point, I had become like the most suffering seeker you could ever imagine. And so ironic because I was right at the door, like last March, total no self shift. I think I was at the door and I didn't go through it. And then I just became this seeker, like, oh, I need to be awakened, like crazy. Like, how do I do it? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, how do I get there? It's
Yeah.
just,
Seeking is funny because it convinces itself it's trying to find whatever it thinks it's trying to find, but it's actually doing the opposite.
oh, yeah.
It's trying to kind of like keep it at bay a little bit.
Oh,
And
totally.
and and that may just be what needs to happen, which is fine too.
It's just what needs to happen. Yeah. So, I mean, this is why I enlisted the help of Chris. I was like, I'm going to, because I know you had suggested, well, try something different. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to work with somebody and see if they can help me. So she, she's awesome, by the way. And if
Yeah,
anybody's
she
looking
is.
for someone, um, it was like after the first session I had with her, I already had a few sessions. I didn't have a whole lot. But she said, Lisa, you've already been through Kensho, like the first awakening. And I argued. It's like, no, I have not. And it was like 2 or 3 sessions of this. And she was like, yes, you already have. Like you're not identifying with your bias. Like, no, I didn't. I haven't been. I haven't. So eventually I thought, well, maybe I'll just put the sessions on hold because something's not lighting up here. I have got this massive belief that I am not awake and I don't have a clue where I am on the path or what's going on. And, I was just completely, just completely confused, completely. So I took a break from the sessions and I was like, well, I don't know. But then your December retreat came up and that was so helpful. So something happened in the retreat. Um, you were doing a talk on doubt, and I was listening. And quite early on in the talk, I started to realize that I was absorbing every word you were saying without effort. I was like, whoa, yeah, I was really noticing it. And then I started to feel my heart area tingle, and I felt it expanding energetically. I felt it quite literally. And I felt more tingling, like in my palate and the top of my head. And I knew that something in me was expanding. It felt like it was merging with you through the computer screen. That's what it felt like. It felt like it was merging. Um, and I was not just listening and understanding, I was absorbing everything you were saying. And it was happening by itself. Like there was nothing I was doing to do this. And the talk was over and it stayed for a few minutes and it was quite euphoric. I mean, lightly, but I knew something very significant had happened. And again, I don't want to highlight something like this as something like that by itself in that moment didn't wake me up from my doubt belief, you know. But I definitely, it was like a transmission. And going through the retreat for the last few days, I was open for that, you know, doing all that silent meditation. And I just opened myself up to basically relax and allow something bigger than the ego that's been fighting to sort of like come through. That's basically all that it was. So I knew it was significant. I wrote it down in my journal, and that was it. And then the retreat was over. And 2 weeks later, exactly 2 weeks later, I happened to discover David Bingham, his channel. I had never seen his videos before, and something sort of said, "Oh, this feels like I need to watch these." I didn't know what it was. And so 2 weeks later, after the retreat, after the transmission I received from your talk, from you, from the totality, um, I was watching one of his videos where he was coaching somebody. Anyway, her name is Nina, in case anybody is interested in going to have a look. It was David Bingham in conversation with Nina. Sorry, I'm finding it hard to talk now because my this is plugged. Nina.
You're coming across good, yeah.
Okay, good. um, so I was watching that video, and he was coaching her. And she had a lot of frustration with waking up. She was frustrated. She was me. Like it was exact. And I was like, okay, I really need to like watch this. So I was watching very intently. And it was like the last, like he spent an hour and a half with her. He's so good. Like he's so compassionate and patient. Like he's really good at getting people through that first gate. Like he's just phenomenal. And so I was following right along with it because she was so much like me. And he finally, like she kept resisting and saying, "No, I don't get it. I'm not awake." And you say, "Yes, you are." She was like, "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." He said it much more eloquently than that, but um, he she started to get it. I could see it. She started to like let go, and as she was letting go, I was letting go, and so yeah, it was so subtle, you know. Uh, it was really just, it wasn't like something happened to me, like a shift came. It was like, oh yay, a shift. You know, it was okay, I'm gonna let go now. Almost like a decision. Almost like I made a decision to let go. It's like, okay, I'm gonna throw the towel, I'm gonna let go. I'm already awake, you know.
Yeah,
Uh, but you can't just say that.
right,
There
right.
has to there's this, even if it's subtle, it was so subtle for me. I let go, and I could feel this very gentle energy unwinding. Uh, and I had to keep on top of it. I was like, yes, I'm awake. I'm already awake. Already. It is. And I could feel it. I could feel it. And when the video was over, I didn't dare move from my chair. And so I stayed in my chair, and I was like, okay, I got to make sure that this is solid. I don't know how I knew. I just knew it. I had to make it solid. So I kept assuring, I kept uh, inquiring, or I don't know what the word is. I just kept going over it, over it. Yeah. Are you sure? Are you 100% sure that you're awake? I don't remember what the line was I used. I'm just using that as an example. Are you 100% sure that you're awake? Yeah. Yeah. Are you 100% sure? Yeah. I think I did this for like half an hour until it was like done. It's like,
Mm.
I don't have a doubt. I don't have a doubt in my mind for all of eternity. I know I am eternal, and there's not one shred of a doubt, none. Like I
Mm.
waited until I had that final assurance. And that was it. And I got up, I was like, oh well then.
That's
So it
beautiful.
felt like it was like I thought, was this the falling of the second fetter of doubt? Like, I feel like it was like a part two completion of the part one mind disidentification that I had in 2015, because it just wasn't quite complete. It felt like it completed that whole thing. And so for the rest of the day, I had a light euphoria. I felt quite liberated, in a very light way. Um, the next day, the mind came in like a fiend.
Mm.
Like 3 days straight, the mind drove me insane. It exhausted me. It exhausted itself for 3 days. So on the third day, I thought, okay, I gotta lay down in my bed, and I have to intentionally relax. So I did, and the mind, it let go of its fight because it fought for 3 days straight after that shift. So it let go, and then after that, everything felt more balanced, and
Mm.
and it definitely changed the that crazy, desperate seeking energy. It
Mhm.
definitely. I can't say that it totally obliterated it, because it did come back a little bit after. Because then it decided it wanted to have a no self shift. Like, it was like,
Mhm.
okay, now I'm ready for the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris helped me with that, because I booked an appointment with her, and the ego was a little bit resistant. I'm sure a lot of
Mm.
mentors go through this, have to deal with these egos, and she's so gentle and compassionate. Like, she just
Mm.
allowed the ego to just resist and kind of fight. It's like, no, I need the no self shift. Anyway, she helped, because a week after that appointment with her, it kind of like settles. Like, yeah, okay, you're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
fine. It was just like a little final little, yeah. Uh,
Hurrah. Some
nothing.
little ego give having a little party in there. Yeah.
That's all. Yeah, yeah, it did. But so yeah, that's how it has been going for me. I
That's
had two more little shifts after that, and that's probably where I would wrap up.
mm.
But um, yeah, like 10 days after that ego release, doubt release, belief, that whole thing, that's just really significantly set something free.
Mhm.
Um, I was reading Christian McGovern
Mecklenburger.
book, yeah, and I was reading her her Fetter 4 and 5 chapter, and I knew that I had done a lot of that work. So I was reading it. I was like, okay, there's something here. So I was reading her instructions on. So the fetters 4 and 5 are aversion and desire, and I actually did have a little shift. All of a sudden, it was similar to the first shift that I had watching David Bingham's video like 10 days prior, but it was a little more subtle than that, but it was definitely distinct. And I knew there was no reactor. And it kind of, it was so subtle. Like, yeah, like I can't even like express how subtle these little shifts are, but they really do have to be there. Like you really do have to notice them, or
Yeah.
they don't happen.
Yeah.
They can be so subtle, like a feather, you know,
Mm.
gently like floating to the ground.
I
Uh,
agree.
yeah, and so I saw through the reactor, and I felt like there was a little energetic shift, and I did feel a little, definitely a very, very light euphoria for a few hours. Um, but the best shift I had after that, because I think the December retreat set off these dominoes, um, the transmission I got from you in your talk, and then helped to release the doubt, and then it kind of like released the reactor. I don't, you know, 6 weeks after the reactor filter kind of dissolved very lightly, I gave up sugar. I had the most severe sugar addiction anybody could ever have. And I know people say that, but I'm really like, anyone who knows me would say, yeah, yeah, she's about the worst you could get, like sugar, just crazy. And yeah, I mean, I did have a book that helped me, but it's never really about the book or the teacher. It's the right message at the right time that just lines up with something. So I was reading this a book about deprogramming your sugar addiction, and it totally deprogrammed everything. And I quit without willpower or side effects.
Mm,
It stopped, and that's been like, what's this, May? 3 months now.
that's
And
awesome.
I have eaten sugar since, uh, but I'm not addicted to it, and
Right.
it's
It's very
hard to
different.
explain it. Yeah, it is. It's like it does. I could eat it, but I don't. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Something fundamental within my system left.
Mhm.
So, and I don't eat a lot of it because it doesn't make me feel good. But if I
Yeah.
do eat it, it's not a big deal, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
This was probably the biggest shift of my life. That was, yeah, it was, and that was all to do with all the previous work that I had done.
Mm.
Um, it couldn't happen before that because there was just too much conditioning in there, too much, it just wouldn't let it. So
Yeah. I can relate that to like, well, my own experience for sure, but the shift in desire and aversion, that letting go of desire and aversion, or seeing through the fixation itself, um lines up with that really well. It's like it is very, very subtle, and I think that's really why without a proper awakening, it'd be pretty hard to break that fetter. It'd be hard to really break that spell directly. You can definitely weaken it, and you can do a lot of work on it. But when it actually breaks, it's so fascinating what happens afterward. Like something like that will happen where it's like, I would normally react to this, like normally need it or crave it, or shame myself for not for indulging in it, or like feel the push and pull, and it's just like not there at all. And you can even still enjoy it, which is so weird. You could taste it and there's an enjoyment, but there's no reactivity, no reaction, no desire and aversion. And it's like, wow, to be able to live without that is really such a gift. But the funny thing is, before that happens, you don't actually think you want to live without it. You think you want to live with it. It's that's why we hold on so tightly to desired aversion, because it makes us feel alive. It makes me feel like who I am, to defend what I want and try to get it and argue for it and protect it and push away what I don't want and avoid it. And like all of that is completely unnecessary. But it's such a subtle fixation that you can't really intellectually understand that. You have to go to it directly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's so cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing like all of that.
yeah.
Um, Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. What a ride. And your story is just a testament to like what I really try to encourage people to digest. And that is, your story is just not going to look like anybody else's. It's always, there's motifs that are common for sure, but it just looks so different than anyone else's. Um, and that's fine. And that's great that but your orientation to enlightenment the whole time paid off, you can't force the hand of reality. You can't force it to do it the way you want it to or when you want it to. You can't even understand what it's going to be actually. But orienting to that fundamental underlying drive that really has nothing to do with the self, because there's no self for it to have anything to do with anyway. Just orienting to that, even though it's crazy and it doesn't line up with anything in the social matrix, but that's the most powerful thing you can do in your life if you're oriented to what we're talking about. So, and you did it the whole time, which is so perfect, right? All the twists and turns and ups and downs and confusion, but it's also like clockwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I work with people now, because I was doing the energy healings, but then I quit for 3 years. Um, and I was doing nothing, no income, nothing. Like it was crazy. And I never ever had the intention to do the energy treatments again for people. I didn't think it was in me. Like I just lost sort of like a center for it. But just in the last couple of months, it all came back. And so yeah, it did. It all came back, upgraded, new and improved. And I only work with people now that are on this path,
Mm,
that are on the self-realization path, that have the awareness of that, and they have the impetus for that.
I love it.
Yeah, so so I do work that, and my treatments are directly work with helping to sort of create openings or alleviate little blockages that are going on in the unconscious, to help create openings, to create better conditions for further awakening or deeper realization. Much in the same way that other, therapies do that as well, like even like sound healing. It'll just create some energetic openings. So
Mm,
yeah,
beautiful.
so that
Do you,
that's where I am right now, and I'm still working on going for the last half of the fetters 6 to 10. I
the
mean,
higher
I'm
fetters. Yeah.
definitely dipping into those. I've been for,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, they all happen kind of all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So when you work with people, when you do energy work, you do this, you have to be in person with them?
no, I do it. Oh no, distantly. Yeah. Over.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Use
That's
Zoom.
good. That's a
I
huge, that's
actually
going to be a,
always preferred to do it distantly anyway.
uh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes.
Well, that's going to be a tremendous resource for people. So we'll put your links under the video so people can get a hold of you and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your story. It was so, um, I don't know. It is very heartwarming. It just like your whole life has been about this and you've given yourself fully to it and in a sense sacrificed a lot in the relative world for it. And even though most of the time or all of the time you didn't really know exactly where it was headed, you trusted it. And that's the recipe, and it's also very personal to you. It's just really was fun. It was a fun journey to go on. And I would encourage anyone who listens to just just tune into the underlying energy of it and the trust and the like giving it room in your own life and not worrying about the details because it won't be your details. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
cool.
yeah. And thank you so much for inviting me to do this. Like I said, I never imagined ever in a million years that I would be talking to you. But here, we don't make these decisions, these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for your trust and for
yeah.
your time. Yeah, I appreciate it.
That was a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
wasn't scared at all or nervous. It just all flowed fine.
Perfect. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you.